On a calm Sunday morning, the big church in the town was filled with people. Families came dressed in their best clothes, children sang with joy, and everyone looked towards Pastor Daniel with respect. He was seen as a holy man, a guide, and a blessing to the community. People believed that his words were from God, and no one dared to doubt him. While the choir was still singing, the doors of the church suddenly opened. A strange man walked in. His name was Jonah, a man everyone in the town called the Madman. He wore torn clothes, his hair was rough, and his eyes looked wild. People whispered and some even laughed at him, but Jonah walked straight to the front. He stood before the pastor and shouted, "Stop lying to these people." The whole church went silent. The ushers tried to pull him away, but Jonah refused to move. He pointed at Pastor Daniel and began to speak strange but clear words. He revealed secrets about the pastor's private life, things no ordinary man could know. Jonah claimed that the pastor's wealth and power did not come from prayer, but from dark sacrifices done in secret. At first, people thought Jonah was just insane, but when he mentioned the exact hidden place where Pastor Daniel kept forbidden objects, the church members gasped. A few brave men rushed to check, and to everyone's shock, Jonah's words were true. Pastor Daniel's face turned pale. He tried to call Jonah a liar and shouted that he was possessed. But the fear in his eyes gave him away. The congregation broke into chaos. Some cried, some screamed, some ran out in fear. Pastor Daniel tried to escape, but strong hands caught him. As people dragged the pastor out, Jonah laughed loudly and said, "The truth can never stay hidden forever." It was a normal Sunday morning, and the church was full of people who came to worship. Pastor Daniel stood tall at the pulpit, smiling as everyone clapped for him. To the crowd, he was a man of God, a leader, and someone who could never do wrong. The church was peaceful and the service was going smoothly. Suddenly, the heavy wooden doors creaked open. A strange figure entered Jonah, the madman of the town. His appearance was dirty, his hair uncombed, and his clothes torn. Some people whispered, others shook their heads, wondering why he had come inside. Jonah walked with confidence, straight toward the pastor. His eyes were burning with something strange, and his voice was loud enough to silence the choir. He pointed directly at Pastor Daniel and shouted, "You cannot hide anymore." Everyone froze, looking at him in shock. At first, the congregation laughed nervously, thinking it was just another outburst of a madman. But Jonah began to speak secrets no one could have known. He described things Pastor Daniel had done in the dark, rituals, sacrifices, and hidden places where cursed objects were kept. The air inside the church became heavy, and fear spread among the people. Pastor Daniel tried to keep control. He shouted at the ushers to throw Jonah out, claiming the man was possessed by demons. But Jonah's words kept flowing like fire. He mentioned exact details, the time, the the place, the objects, things that made the church members doubt their pastor. Finally, a few men decided to check Jonah's claims. When they returned, they carried the very objects Jonah had spoken about: strange idols, blood-stained cloth, and forbidden charms. The truth was exposed before everyone's eyes. Panic filled the church. Some people screamed, some cried, and others tried to run. Pastor Daniel's face turned pale, and he attempted to flee, but the congregation caught him. Jonah stood tall in the chaos and laughed bitterly. "The truth," he said, "can never stay buried." The service in the church had reached its peak. People were clapping, singing, and shouting amen as Pastor Daniel lifted his hands to pray. He looked confident, but deep inside, his heart was not pure. Unknown to the congregation, he carried a heavy secret that he thought no one would ever uncover. The wooden doors of the church slammed open. Jonah, the madman of the streets, walked in. Everyone turned their heads. Mothers pulled their children close, and some men stood up, ready to chase him out. But Jonah kept walking forward, his steps strong and unafraid. He stopped right in front of Pastor Daniel and stared at him without fear. Then, in a loud voice, Jonah cried, "This man standing before you is not who you think he is." His words spread like fire across the silent church. People looked at one another in confusion, wondering if the madman had finally lost his mind. Jonah continued, speaking secrets with shocking clarity. He revealed how Pastor Daniel performed rituals late at night, sacrificing innocent lives to gain wealth and power. He described the exact house where these things took place and even named some people who had vanished mysteriously. Pastor Daniel tried to shout over Jonah, calling him a liar and a tool of Satan. But the fear in his trembling hands could not be hidden. The ushers tried to push Jonah outside, but he stood firm and refused to leave. Some brave members of the church rushed out to confirm Jonah's words. Minutes later, they returned carrying evidence: strange idols, bottles filled with blood, and charms wrapped in cloth. The entire church gasped in horror. The congregation fell into chaos. Some screamed, some prayed, and others rushed to leave. Pastor Daniel collapsed to his knees, begging for mercy. Jonah laughed bitterly and declared, "The truth has spoken. God's house cannot hide evil." The church had never been so silent. After Jonah's shocking words, every eye was fixed on Pastor Daniel. He stood frozen, his lips trembling, his forehead wet with sweat. For years, people had trusted him as their shepherd, but now doubt filled their hearts. Jonah's voice echoed across the hall as he pointed at the pastor. "You wear white robes, but your hands are red with blood. You pretend to bless, but in secret you curse. Tell them, Pastor, where you go at midnight." His words were sharp like arrows, piercing the faith of the people. The congregation looked confused. Some shouted lies, while others whispered, "What if it's true?" The atmosphere was tense, and the holy place now felt like a battlefield. Pastor Daniel tried to gather strength. He raised his Bible high and shouted, "The devil has entered this man to destroy the house of God." His voice was powerful, but his eyes were restless. He ordered the ushers again to drag Jonah outside. But Jonah refused to move. Instead, he laughed loudly, a laugh that made everyone uneasy. He revealed even more secrets, how Pastor Daniel had stolen from church offerings, how he visited graveyards at night, and how he used people's prayers as fuel for his dark practices. A group of young men, shaken by fear but guided by curiosity, decided to investigate. They left the church quickly to search the pastor's private office and house. Meanwhile, Jonah kept speaking, exposing hidden truths one by one. When the young men returned, they carried strange objects they had found, candles stained with blood, bones wrapped in black cloth, and a book of dark rituals. They placed the items in front of the congregation. The church erupted in cries. Some fainted, others knelt to pray, and many shouted against the pastor. Pastor Daniel's power over the people began to collapse. Jonah stood tall, his eyes shining with strange light, and declared, "This house belongs to God, and no secret darkness can live here forever." The church was now in complete confusion. People who once shouted "Amen" to Pastor Daniel were now shouting at him in anger. Mothers held their children close, men whispered among themselves, and fear filled the holy hall. Everyone wanted to know if Jonah's words were truly from God or from madness. Jonah stood calmly in the middle of the crowd. His dirty clothes and wild eyes no longer mattered. His voice carried authority. "You trusted this man," he said, pointing at Pastor Daniel, "but he fed on your faith while serving darkness." Pastor Daniel fell to his knees, holding his Bible close to his chest. He tried to cry and begged, "Do not believe this madman. He is possessed. I am your shepherd." But his tears looked forced, and his trembling body betrayed him. One elder of the church stepped forward. He was a man respected by all, named Elder Samuel. He looked at the strange objects the young men had brought from the pastor's home, idols, bones, and blood-stained candles. His voice broke as he said, "Pastor, these things were found in your room. How can you explain them?" The congregation turned silent, waiting for an answer. Pastor Daniel opened his mouth, but no words came out. His silence was louder than any confession. Jonah laughed bitterly. "A shepherd who feeds on his sheep cannot hide forever. God sees, and today he has spoken through me." His words cut deep into every heart. Some people began to wail loudly, asking God for forgiveness. Others rushed forward, demanding that Pastor Daniel be removed from the pulpit. The once powerful pastor tried to stand, but was pushed down by angry hands. The holy place, once filled with songs of praise, now shook with cries of betrayal and fear. Jonah lifted his hands and shouted, "Let truth rule in this house, for lies have no place in God's temple." The church walls echoed with cries and confusion. Some people fainted, others prayed loudly, and many shouted for Pastor Daniel to be punished. The man they once trusted as their holy leader now looked weak, broken, and exposed before everyone. Jonah, the madman, stood strong in the center. His rough clothes and wild hair no longer made him look foolish. Instead, his words carried a strange power that silenced even the loudest voices. He lifted his hands and declared, "God does not live in lies." A leader who drinks blood cannot lead the flock of Christ. Pastor Daniel tried one last time to defend himself. With trembling hands, he opened his Bible and shouted verses. But the words sounded empty, and his voice cracked with fear. The more he spoke, the more guilty he appeared. Elder Samuel stepped forward again. His face was full of sorrow. He turned to the congregation and said, "Brothers and sisters, we have been blind. The truth is before us, and we must act." His words broke the final chain of trust the people had for Pastor Daniel. Several strong men from the church rushed forward. They grabbed Pastor Daniel, who struggled to escape, but his strength was gone. The crowd shouted angrily, demanding answers he could not give. Jonah pointed at the pastor and said, "This man is not only a liar, but he has brought curses upon this house. Unless he is removed, more darkness will fall." His voice thundered like a warning from above. Fear spread across the hall. Some people begged God for mercy, others ran out of the church in panic, and a few even cursed the pastor loudly. Pastor Daniel wept bitterly, realizing his secret life was destroyed forever. Jonah looked around at the trembling crowd and spoke with finality, "Light has entered this place. The darkness has been exposed. Let no one ever forget what has happened today." The church that once rang with songs of praise was now filled with fear and heavy silence. The truth had been laid bare, and nothing could erase it. Pastor Daniel, the man everyone had once trusted, was now on the ground, broken and surrounded by shame. His secret life of darkness had been exposed by the very man people once mocked as mad. Jonah stood tall, his wild eyes burning with strange fire. His dirty clothes and rough voice no longer mattered. He was the voice of truth that morning. The congregation looked at him with mixed emotions, fear, respect, and awe. Some whispered, "Surely, God has used this man." Pastor Daniel wept, begging for forgiveness, but the people were too hurt. They had followed him blindly, giving him their money, their trust, and their faith. Now they felt betrayed and cursed. Angry shouts filled the church, "Take him away. He is not our shepherd." Elder Samuel raised his hand to calm the crowd. With a heavy heart, he declared, "This house must be cleansed. The lies have been revealed, and we must return to God with pure hearts." His words brought a sense of order to the chaos. The strong men of the church dragged Pastor Daniel out. His cries echoed, but no one paid attention anymore. The same people who once called him holy now turned their backs on him. His downfall was complete. Jonah stepped forward once more and said, "I was called mad, but today the truth has spoken. Remember this day, no secret can stay hidden in the house of God." Then he walked out of the church slowly, leaving the people in deep shock. From that day, the story of the madman who revealed the pastor's secret spread through the whole town. And everyone learned a fearful lesson, that darkness, no matter how well hidden, will always be exposed in the light. Thank you very much for watching our video. Please subscribe to the channel and like the video to encourage us.